Hi, I'm Jocelyn. I'm an artist who works a lot with psychogeography as well as with the medium format camera.
Hi, I'm Xiaocong. I'm a visual artist currently researching into archaeological practices and also how human presence lingers within the landscape.
I'm Huijun. I work on kinetic installations that sit on the intersection between art, technology, music and engineering. And I'm currently looking into resilient systems that essentially have biological ecosystems and how that can kind of inform our relationship with technology. So when Sediment Sinks is an exhibition that brings together the three of us, working through a range of mediums to look at the passage of time and how that can be captured in an artwork. So we're looking at things like how materials such as water, sands, as well as hair sheddings come to be, and then how that can be manifested and kind of displayed and serve as creative impetus for the staging of artworks. A lot of our works are very process-driven, so in the way that we make the works and also the thematic concerns. So as we were having conversations with one another, we were kind of always ending up to touch on these connection points in general, I guess like in our organic conversations, and then that's kind of how the theme came to be. Yeah, we were trying to distill and crystallize that type of thinking into the theme of the show.
So basically, Untitled Topography, done in 2015, is actually one of my earlier works that I sort of restaged within When Sediment Sinks. Yeah, so this work actually explores the passage of time in quite a multi-layered way. So one way I would see is that I personally take walks within like our everyday spaces, and these long walks actually contribute to my experiences, and I use the medium format camera in a way to mediate that experience. So I will go around capturing images using analog photography, and with that, walking is one of the things that drives the entire practice, and in that sense I'm capturing or experiencing the very moment in space, but using image to capture that experience and reflecting upon that is also another way of seeing time as well. And with analog photography, I think there is that idea of a gap time between when the photo is taken and when the photograph is finally developed as well. Yeah, so the physical images or the printed images that you actually see within this installation is of a certain time period, I would say, but it's also juxtaposed against another layer of time which are actually embedded within the writings. Yeah, so within the writings, I actually went onto Google Maps itself. That was something that was quite new at that point of time. So then I wrote about the spaces based on my experiences navigating the Google Maps platform. I would say that the passage of time is quite complex in that sense. It's interwoven, like different times, different layers of time all together. Yeah, and along with the other new work that I created for this show is actually a video work itself. So with this video work, actually it also explores the gap time between when the photograph is taken and when we finally see the photograph using analog photography. Yeah, so that huge gap time I sort of will actually recall and try and write about my experiences and write about what each and every image will actually turn out to be. And ultimately, I will juxtapose text as well as the image together to see the sort of dissonance or the perhaps the disjunction between the two. Yeah.
So for this exhibition, the work that I've selected from my university days is actually a series of hair embroideries called sheddings. So sheddings was done when I first moved to a flat in London, and it became an intimate space of contemplation and introspection. And that kind of inspired me to think about space and time as a frame, like a frame of mind actually, where transformations and metamorphosis can take place. Within that space, I have learned to adapt to a new country, to a new environment, to a new way of life as well. And that motif that I've used, which is one of the chrysalis, is a symbolic object of that passage of time, of that transformation, and it is a remnant of that process. And so similarly with the selection of fallen hair as a material, is to draw that parallel between human metabolism and also a more mental and psychological change. And so that kind of also continued into the newer work, which is titled Pit. So that looked at a wider time scale. So instead of the time that I spent within my lifetime in London, it looks at humanity, the timeline of humanity to the state of a Neolithic period and that dawn of civilization, that moment where humans are still kind of very much at a very primitive state of understanding their environment, understanding themselves, and that traces that they left for us as contemporaries to find, and mostly archaeological, with digs, with artifacts, with material culture, and how that sort of becomes our way of tracing back to finding out where we came from, where we all perhaps came from. Yes.
So I've staged 2 works for the exhibition. So in Tiny Bugs, which is a site-specific installation made with tracing paper and sand, it was very much inspired by the site in which it was first installed. So within the space that was first installed, there were 2 skylights that kind of had little islets of light coming into the space, and I would observe them over the course of the day, and they would travel across the space and kind of mark the passage of time, almost a bit like a sundial. So I was very inspired to kind of try to capture this natural rhythm of the day through a work that would kind of make use of the vertical space and fixate that sunlight moving through the space and time. This is also interplays with my interest in real-time phenomena, making things happen in front of your eyes in a way that cannot be replicated. So that's how I utilized the different motors in the work in order to kind of spontaneously cause the sand particles to fall. As you walk through the sand particles on the ground, that creates a trace, which is a marking of a previous time that once was. So that is how the passage of time was explored in Tiny Bugs. And then moving on to the new work, Eclogite, which was made this year, it juxtaposes real-time and geological time. So it looks at the process of metamorphism, which is where an existing rock is transformed into another form of rock after being subjected to heat and pressure over a long period of time. At the same time, the viewers are invited to kind of drop dye and oil onto the surface of the water that's contained within the installation, contribute to the transformation of it over time. So we're thinking about geological time, time of the past, how things come to be, and also in real time you're slowly transforming an installation into something that carries and holds a trace.
For myself, I think walking is one of the key practices that really inspired, because it's something that we do every day. We walk to get something from the grocery store, we walk for a purpose, we walk leisurely in the park. So walking has various functions and various times that we actually practice walking, but with different intentions. But actually walking is also a means for a lot of people to think through and experience our everyday spaces. So because of that, I do quite frequently, I do a lot of walking around our everyday environment, and be it the work Untitled Topography, I sort of created it in the UK back then. So UK is a place that is quite new for me at that point of time, yet at the same time, my few years experience back there through walking allowed me to really get to understand deeper like the spirit of the place. Yeah, so walking as an inspiration really was a starting point for a lot of my practice and my works in general. Yeah, so I really wanted to question what exactly are we walking for. In today's very everyday sort of fast-paced lifestyle, we kind of just perhaps see walking as a function, a mere thing to get from one place to another, or sometimes we want to really fast forward certain things such that we see that maybe we do not need to walk, we ask for a delivery service and so on. Yeah, so walking has a lot of like meanings, and really it allows us to experience spaces, but we need to take time and slow down things along with it. Yeah, so and therefore I center a lot of my practice on that. I think as we walk through spaces, sometimes it's also letting ourselves get lost and drift through the different spaces. So then in our everyday we are kind of moving perhaps along with the designs of like the curbs and maybe certain things that draw us to really drift around in our everyday. And therefore through psychogeography itself as well, I wanted to find out deeper about all these different things embedded within our everyday spaces.
For myself, I think my interest in making things happen in real time actually all started from having a kind of a long background in music. My interest in sound and the kind of like sensitization that comes from somatic sound and how we respond to it in a very physical and very intuitive way started my interest in making things happen in real time. So it went from making sound installations and then videos that carry a lot of very layered soundscapes to actually wanting to create those with kinetic sculptures. So, and then obviously together with sound comes a long-standing interest in engineering, making things happen and building little rigs and things like that, which is always just, I'm not sure where it's come from, but it's always been a practice that I've done since I was a child. So then bringing those two together, that kind of inspired the use of sound, use of real time, and also the very heavily engineering inspired components in my work. I think in terms of like interactions and experiences, like something that really stuck out to me during the course of the show was when the children were interacting with some of the works and they were just kind of very intuitively responding to things. Yeah, even looking at the handprints and then being like, oh, these look like my handprints, or like playing in the sand, drawing things, doodling in the sand with their fingers, climbing underneath the tank to look up and try to kind of witness the ripples and things like that. That's very nice to kind of like be able to create an experience that is quite kind of open to all ages and all levels of understanding. Yeah.
I mean, like when you mentioned the hand thing, like that's what I also observed, which is really, really nice because the work accompaniment is my attempt at actually to kind of channel and connect with these 13 women that were nameless from a very, very far away time and space. And it was initially like a dialogue between me and the information of these women. But with the presentation of works and with the presentation of the handprints, and seeing that the audience actually kind of invite themselves into that process between me and the subject matter and to join us in connecting physically with these like very abstract ideas of past human beings. It becomes a three-person dialogue almost, from an artist subject dialogue to a discussion. Yeah.
So I think accompanying the show, we also do have like 2 workshops. So one of which includes audio walk. So we actually made the work in relation to what we have created here. So we got the audience to put on their earphones to actually listen to a set of instructions in order to navigate human barracks. So they actually went out with the same set of instructions to experience the space, but yet they took on different routes because it's not really fixed. So we wanted them to get to know the spaces, and during that walk itself, we had a sort of post-reflection whereby some of them actually shared that they usually come to this space in order to really go to specific galleries to visit works. But this time around, as they took on this walk, they really experienced the space as it is really very differently from their usual intent of coming here.
Yeah, they did share that they kind of tap into the natural rhythms of the space as well. Instead of always feeling very frantic and looking for directions, they are kind of marinating almost in the space, right? And the sounds. Yeah, that was very nice. I think that's something that we also discussed that we wanted it to come out of the show, which is that it gives a moment for you to pause, to kind of think and look a bit more closely at something, and kind of also think about maybe certain processes in your life or certain experiences that you've had that might have been fleeting, but how do those reside within you? What traces do they leave? You know? And that was like, yeah. I think we managed to do that with quite a few of based on the feedback that we've heard, yeah.
Personally, I think for me, having a group show like this allows me to situate my practice alongside the two of them over here. Through that, it actually draws new interpretations and meanings to the work that brings a different light as opposed to what I usually want to directly communicate to the audience. Yeah, so in this case, like the ideas of trace, like sediments, how does it really resonate with the work, be it textural surfaces through the work, be it traces through the different layers of like memories within spaces as well. Yeah, so I would think that in this case, I'm able to really consider a sort of different perspective that I do not usually think. Yeah.
I think riffing off that, one of the key considerations when we were putting together the work is kind of, looking at both similarities and tensions or differences. Both of them can be productive as well, I think, because even though we're looking at very different mediums, actually formally they're quite similar, maybe in terms of color, between Eclogite and Untitled Topography, or between tiny bugs and pit, the kind of earthy tones or the greenish bluish tones. But at the same time also acknowledging that one is a still work, one is unfolding in time, and how do those accompany each other? We were also trying to think across mediums, thinking about pit and the image of the body as well as accompaniment, as well as looking at juxtaposed with Joss's drift, right? So those things kind of come together to maybe give voice to a form. Things like that. So thinking a bit more flexibly about how the different words can kind of interplay with each other and also differ in a way to make the kind of focus of the work stand out more as well. Yeah.
I think for us, even though we work with very different mediums, we share also similarities in our core concern as artists. There's always that question, where are we going? Where do we come from? And it is presented and explored in many different facets, and that's what creates that difference. We see different parts of that question and their answer in different materials, and to present it in the same space, it also gives a very layered response to those very, central questions as artists.
I think it's very important to start with, for us, I guess, just sharing from our experience, it was very important to start with the concept first. So the concerns and what we're trying to convey, they aligned and overlapped first. Then we were able to kind of have other kind of discussions about form, about medium, So that is what would kind of bring together any type of very disparate, seemingly on first glance, disparate practices.
I think it's like you said, communication is really, really important. Like before coming to a very solid or like a very decided framework that you want to show, because as you said, you have to discuss and understand each other's works, each other's viewpoints to see how things could fit together.
Along with that, because this show we are actually staging one old work and some of it are actually quite site-specific, and this time around with one old work as well as one newer work, we had to be in a way flexible as to how we should reconfigure the work to the new space as well.
I mean, having practiced art full-time for like a number of years and having organized indie shows and trying to get things going, it is a persisting concern about when we are so focused on doing our work as artists. Having practiced art as an independent artist for a number of years and experienced the difficulties and challenges of putting shows together with friends, with people that we want to put shows together with, there's that struggle with, okay, do you put most of your time in thinking about your work, which is what you should be doing, and also the necessary things that you have to think about in terms of logistics and actually executing a show. And a lot of that parts, is very important to like the effect of the eventual exhibition, but it's something that as artists, we tend to kind of it's not our most priority, because our priority as artists is to put out good works. But there are things such as publicity, marketing, like logistics. It's something that we tend to have to struggle a little bit with. And with this program, I think it kind of provides a very strong support in that area, in the sense that I was very, very grateful. I am very grateful for the marketing and all these like collaterals, because when we are doing artwork, we don't really always have the time to think about, okay, how do we document this? How do we think about the legacy of this event, post-event?
Something that I learned from setting up the show, and I think possibly you guys experienced this too, it was the navigating the new space, especially with the staging of the old work. So especially with Tiny Bugs, it was completely taken out of its original context. The initial frame was anchored to walls. So in this case, it was a matter of suspending and creating a brand new false ceiling, which was challenging, but also I think quite well supported by the space. We had so many technical discussions about the space as well, noting down little things like power socket placement, where the light tracks are, where the beams are, things like that. So I think, the technical aspects of setting up the show was a key learning point, for sure.
Riding on your point as well, I do agree that I think restaging the new work here is quite different. So to give some context, Untitled Topography was also situated within like a sort of balcony space, so having the tables overlooked. So we were actually trying to think how to then navigate this space to allow the audience to still be able to walk through, have that experience, at the same time then also to experience the other works.
I think, yes, the restaging is, it really challenges you to think of your own work in a different light as well. So for sheddings, the parameters of the work is quite intimate and is very spatial. But as you can see, the works in the space are their presence is pretty felt. And so to kind of have it in a slightly different space but still connected via Jocelyn's work, it really brings out a different side of it.